Welcome to Module J. In this section, we're going to move from an era of gentlemen architects who are doing it just out of love of the game, phones, to some of the first world traveling professionals. We say Ross was early in this, but this gentleman here and the people he traveled with really become the first world travelers of golf course architecture. Hugh Alison of the Colt and Alison firm. Colt, as you recall, we talked about during the Heathlands. Colt moves into this era also. This is post-World War I, or right around World War I. The Industrial Revolution is taking over. Golf course design methods are changing. Travel methods are changing. And they're able to do a lot more design. So Colt and Alison were a firm, and actually Dr. Alister Mackenzie worked with them for a while, but they fought. So this is kind of moving into the era where the architects, like today, don't get along as much and fight for jobs. So Burning Tree, pretty famous Washington, D.C. club, Knollwood in Chicago. He also did golf courses in Australia, Europe, and Japan. So 1914, World War I happened. So this is going to be similar to World War II in the Civil War, where golf design is dramatically changed by world events. Some architects have to go home. The war's raging in Europe. It's not as big a deal in the United States. The United States does get involved, but it's not threatening here. Colt stays in the U.S. And starts to work with Alison. But one of the other things about the war is every time there's a war, we get innovation. And the big innovation from this war is, you can see, is tracked vehicles. So this moves into the equipment that we can use to build golf courses. And I'll show you some pictures here in a second. But the main guy that I really want to talk about is Dr. Alister Mackenzie. Becomes a truly worldwide architect, does great golf courses that are still played today all over the world, from Michigan to England to Australia. Mackenzie was a doctor. He wrote that he was going to leave medicine because he was sick of looking at sick people. He wanted to do something that would help make people healthier. He was going to design golf courses so they would go out and walk and be healthier. So I think he's rolling in his grave when he drives by Pinehurst Resorts and sees all the carts out there. But this was what he was doing. It turns out he wasn't really a good doctor. His father was a doctor, and he kind of got into the practice, but he didn't like it. And he did spend some time in the Boer Wars, which were wars before World War I, where camouflage techniques were first used and invented, and I'm going to show you some pictures of that in a second. So here's a picture that Mackenzie shows, and if you look at this picture, what's going on is you see a guy there, but there's something else going on. There's these two guys, and they're basically here. So these techniques that were come up for the Boer War and then for World War I were used by Mackenzie, and this is a diagram of how they would camouflage a trench. They would dig the trench, they would roll the sod back on both sides, mostly on the front, dig the trench, and then roll the sod back. So this is some of the techniques that Mackenzie ends up using in his designs. And you can see by doing this in reverse, he doesn't hide the bunkers, but he accentuates them. So looking back on a Mackenzie course from green to tee, you don't see the bunkers at all. But from tee to green, the bunkers are very prevalent. And here's philosophy, something that Mackenzie wrote in his book that really holds true today. The modern golfers playing these high shots that land on soft greens is really not what he preferred or what he was designing for. And his courses are designed for the ground game. One of the interesting things about Dr. Mackenzie that I think makes him such a great architect for all levels of golf is he was never better than an 18 handicapper. So he wasn't a great golfer, but no one would argue that he wasn't a great golf course architect. He did courses all over the world, Ireland, Uruguay, Australia, Royal Melbourne, very famous, where they played the President's Cup a few years ago, Argentina, Canada, and then some of his most famous work in the U.S. On the Monterey Peninsula and also up in Michigan. Here's a plaque in his home of Leeds, and also a picture of him doing one of the things he enjoyed doing most. There's a great story of how he was designing very drunk at Crystal Downs, and Perry Maxwell was his assistant at that time, and he turned in great plans of 17 holes. So the 18th hole at Crystal Downs is a short par 3 because they just kind of had to fit it in to this great design that he had worked on. Here's the University of Michigan golf course. One of the things I really like about this golf course is it has some similarities to St. Andrews. This tower was there when he designed it in the early 1900s, and about 8 or 9 of the shots coming back have that as your target. Similar to the target at St. Andrews on the 17th that we talked about. So he played these holes, he played these other courses, and he's one of the few designers that really designs a complete experience. And this is really prevalent at Crystal Downs, where there's a bunker that's 5 fairways away that fits into the back of a bunker on the fairway that you're on that makes the bunker look twice as large as it really is. So some of these modern architects that have power lines crossing their golf courses, Mackenzie would have never put up with that. He was designing a total experience when he designed his golf courses. This is Crystal Downs in Upper Michigan, and it's a great study of Dr. Mackenzie because the houses are off the golf course, and it's wonderful sandy terrain. It said that he designed the University of Michigan golf course, and then some investors had gotten him on a train to go up to Traverse City, and he was not happy about it. He was grumbling and hungover and upset. But as they got closer to Traverse City and started to see these soils, these sandy soils, he got really excited, and it reminded him of Australia and some of his home soils in Leeds. And he really turned out a magnificent golf course that, because of the weather in Upper Michigan, and also the club really was not a huge wealthy club, it was never redesigned. So it's really a testament to the wonderful design that Mackenzie did. Here's the 6th hole at Crystal Downs. So you see the angles, lots of strategy, wide open fairways, lots of different places to go, and then these craggly bunkers that have been recently restored. Here's this bunker is called the Scabs. They show you when they were raking it back in the day, and then there's a modern look at the Scabs. So very craggly bunker. Again, this tree's probably in the way, but really wonderful golf course, and it's up on the Lake Michigan, excuse me. But the golf course is really not on Lake Michigan, so the houses are on the lake, which keeps them off the golf course. Here's Mackenzie was famous for undulating greens. Here's one in England at Sitwell Park. Again, a short par 3 with incredibly tortuous green, a very difficult green to keep grass on in modern day times with the putting heights that we've got, but very fun to play on also. One of his most famous golf courses, Cypress Point. This is actually how he got the job at Augusta. This is Maria Hollings. She was the developer, actually one of the only famous golf course developer women. She designed Cypress Point and also Pasatiempo. Didn't design, but developed. and she is credited with introducing Bobby Jones to Dr. Mackenzie. So a golf club that has no women wouldn't have even started without this pretty famous U.S. amateur champion, Maria Hollins. In the early 20s, golf courses were being built very, very rapidly. In 1916, there were 742 courses in the U.S. By 1923, there were 1,900, so over a doubling. And then by 1929, there were 5,000, so doubling and then a doubling again. This rapid construction won't happen again until 1967. So how did these architects do so many golf courses? The trains were running. Actually, airplane travel was available, so Mackenzie was able to cross the big ocean quicker than Ross could on a steamship. They were able to use the immigrant pro-greenskeepers who knew what to do, so they were able to lay the golf courses out pretty quickly. And they were able to do some paper projects, and then James Braid does one of the first paper projects. Remember we talked about Braid was deathly afraid of travel, so he actually did a golf course in the United States without ever coming to the United States. And I love this picture. Mike Mulligan is one of my favorite stories growing up, but the steam shovel becomes an important part of golf course construction. You can imagine how much this changes design. Instead of using a board and a mule, you can use a steam shovel. So we can do deep cuts and fills, like Charles Banks and Dr. Mackenzie begin to do these, and Seth Rayner used this new technology of steam shovel to really radically change the contours on the modern or the golden age golf course. So as we move forward, the Monterey Peninsula becomes important. Pebble Beach opens in 1918. Jack Neville and Douglas Grant, amateur champions, do this. They don't really do any other golf courses, but they small contoured greens in one of the best natural settings ever, with 7 holes on the ocean. So pretty important golf course in the history of golf, but not really a design. Neville and Grant were great amateur golfers, and this golf course has been redone a little bit, and pretty famous U.S. Open champions there. Here you can see the routing: 1, 2, 3, and then 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, and 10 along the water, and then it comes back inland, and then finishes with 17 and 18 along the water. And 18 is probably your classic Cape finish hole. You could say that Neville and Grant used the Charles Blair Macdonald style of taking great holes from other places and just putting them on a great site. There's the 7th, a par 3, straight into the wind, into the water. So I wouldn't turn down around at Pebble Beach, but it's not super important in our design course by architect's standpoint for history, but it is important for hole design. And there's the Cape hole. They've been doing lots of seawall work to try to keep this course from going in the water, and also there's a tree that's pretty important that has had to be replaced. So that should give you some idea that trees probably should not be an integral part of the golf course design, because they do die. They get bigger and then they die. So if you want to keep the course difficulty similar, it's often said that trees should probably not be an integral part of the design. Cypress Point, designed by Dr. Alister Mackenzie, opens in 1928. There's Maria Hollins, the developer, playing that first round with Mackenzie and lots of people. That's at Pasatiempo, which is also out on the Monterey Peninsula. 3 dramatic holes, a 230-yard 16th, very strategic hole. Many people say it's the doctor's best design. Most people that have played it, when you give them the question, if you had to play one golf course only the rest of your life, this is the one that they pick. So very, very influential golf course, and also interesting in the fact that it has 6 holes on the water, 6 holes in the woods, and 6 holes that are linksy. So it gives you quite a bit of variety in the design. So it's said that Seth Rayner was hired to do the routing. Did Mackenzie look at his routing? Nobody knows. It's speculation. The Rayner people would say that he did. The Mackenzie people would say that he didn't. But again, it fits into this theme of when you have one architect do the routing and another architect do the whole design, sometimes we get a better design because we get more variety or variability. Here's the famous par 3 16th at Cypress. Brutal penal shot there with the layup. Originally the hole was going to be a par 4 where you would lay up here and come in, but it was such a good one-shot hole that they moved the tee forward, and ever since it's been one of the most dramatic par 3s in golf. There's a picture of it in its day in very classic Mackenzie bunkers out there on a very treacherous, scary tee shot. Here's the 15th at Cypress. Again, the classic Mackenzie bunkers, craggly, rough around the edges, and just beautiful cypress trees. So windswept, open golf course that just really everybody loves. So as we move forward, some of the other things going on with Donald Ross, and then again Stanley Thompson. And Stanley Thompson we're talking about pretty much because he's going to be the one that trains Robert Trent Jones, who's going to be the focus of our course for after World War II. There's Ross putting on the sand greens, which are being converted, are going to soon be converted to Bermuda grass in Pinehurst. And there's Stanley. And Stanley's one of the real thinking architects. He did a lot of drawing, a lot of thinking about design, and some great, great golf courses up in Canada. 6 of the 8 U.S. Opens between 1919 and 1926 played on his courses. He's really a rock star, and he's humble. And this is an incident of there was a design that Willie Watson did. The members wanted Ross to do it. Ross came and looked at it, said it's fine, use this design, and they still had him do it. He was doing too much work in his mind at the time, working on 8 courses at a time, and he didn't feel he could do his best work. But he still had mouths to feed, and was really trying to keep his machine of construction foremen and construction men working. So he was traveling back and forth along the railroad lines, designing lots of golf courses at once. One of his best, where he gets a great site that he really likes, is Seminole in Palm Beach, Florida, a little bit north of Miami. Beautiful, beautiful place. The site is a bowl. It's a natural bowl on the ocean. So these golf holes are able to go up the bowl and down and back, and there's a nice amount of topographical changes. This is a very secretive club. This is the only place we haven't been able to put an intern that wanted to go. The golf course maintenance crew is pretty much all Seminole Indians. It's a very small crew. It's a very small site. There's sea grapes that go around the course. They have one maintenance crew guy that all he does is trim the sea grapes. This golf course has been redone. It was very controversial. The Donald Ross Society came out strongly against it. But the original plans are at the Tufts Archives. So if you get a chance to look at those, it's worth taking a look. magnificent sight. There's the sea grapes I was talking about, and these grow very, very high in that climate. Again, a very Florida climate, but a marvelous small acreage golf course, tightly packed along this dune. So the holes play up into the dune and then down the hill and then back up into another dune. So, and there's some of the cars. Again, a very exclusive. If you see one of these license plates, you know the guy's a member at Seminole. Kelly Miller, one of our local golf course owners, is a member at Seminole. So that's something to know. But it's a very difficult ticket, so very hard to get to see that. We have had interns at the Bear Club, which is very near there, and that's a neat place to work also. It's a playground for the rich and famous down there in South Florida. Stanley Thompson is a Canadian architect. Banff and Jasper Park are built in the Rockies. They're actually built by the railroad companies because the railroad companies are looking for a way to get people on the train to go up there. Donald Ross did a drawing for one of the first golf courses built by the railroad company up there. And the engineers were used to doing contour lines in 1-foot contour lines. And Ross sent them in 1-inch contour lines. So they built a hole and a guy fell off and broke his leg. So learning to read the scale is pretty important. After that, Stanley Thompson was hired because he was in Canada and he was able to go up there. And these are some of the most beautiful, relaxing golf courses to get away from. Robert Trent Jones comes out of Cornell and goes to work for Stanley Thompson. And then later, when Thompson's health fails, RTJ is able to take over his practice. And there's a picture of Banff, Jasper Park, so one of these up in the Rockies of northern Canada. Just a beautiful place to go on a golfing vacation.